10. One dead jogger. A farmer in Arkansas has confessed to running down a jogger with his pickup truck, having his way with her, killing her, and then dumping her body as if she were just a piece of trash. His name is Quake Llewellyn, and he might just be one of the worst people to have ever existed. This vicious slaying happened back in August of 2021, but Quake had to be looked at by a psychologist so that he could be ruled competent to face the charges placed against him. And according to the forensic psychologist, Quake Llewellyn was not affected by any mental disease at the time of the alleged conduct. What this means is that he was fully aware of what he was doing, and he did it maliciously and with intent. But just who is this crazy farmer who killed a perfectly innocent jogger? Quake is a 28-year-old loner, divorced from his wife and living a sad existence. He ran over Sydney Sutherland with a truck as she was jogging near his small farm in Jackson County. At first, he claimed it was an accident. After he accidentally hit her with his truck, he first told the police that he walked over and asked if she was okay. When she didn't respond, he thought she was dead. He then put her in the tailgate of his truck, drove into a rice field, dug a hole, tore her clothes off, and got real weird, and then disposed of her. He went home and had dinner by himself and went to sleep. The next day, he started working at the farm just like any other day. Believe it or not, the lonely divorced man may have gotten away with the crime, except that when the police came to question him, he spilled the beans and confessed the whole thing, although he tried to frame it like an accident. He wasn't counting on the Arkansas State Crime Lab determining Sydney had not been accidentally killed with his car, but intentionally murdered. 9. Murder in South Africa. Farming in South Africa is one of the most dangerous businesses to be involved in. It's quite a bit complicated history-wise, but here's the gist of it. In South Africa, back during apartheid, white South Africans did all of the farming. They owned all the farms and all the property. All these years later, with apartheid abolished, white people still own the majority of the farmland in South Africa. A lot of people aren't too happy about this, and so there have been a string of violent assaults and murders in the last few years on rural farmers. One of the more violent recent attacks came on a female worker who was violated and then strangled to death while working her own land east of Johannesburg. Two armed men ambushed Chantel Kershaw, ripped her underwear off and stuffed them into her mouth, then dragged her inside her own garage where she was killed. It was absolutely horrendous. In a separate incident that happened just 2 days later, 21-year-old farmer Brendan Horner was attacked in Paul Rue, Free State Province, while trying to work on his farm. He's actually the farm manager, but was attacked by a group of men who tortured Brendan in ways so horrific I can't even repeat them. His dead body was then tied to a post and left outside the farm like some disgusting totem from the days when Vlad Tempes still impaled people on spikes. 8. The Iowa pig farmer. The Iowa pig farmer who murdered his wife with a corn rake has been handed down a sentence of life in prison. Todd M. Mullis of Earlville was sentenced by Iowa District County Judge Thomas Bitter for the brutal first-degree murder of Amy Mullis on their farm in November of 2018. According to what prosecutors said, Todd got into a horrible rage over an extramarital affair that his wife was having. She was cheating on him and she wanted a divorce, so he picked up a corn rake and impaled her with it. Throughout the trial, Todd maintained his innocence, but there was really no way he was getting around this one. The attorney representing justice for the slain wife even argued that Todd had been thinking about killing Amy for years. The couple got married in 2004, but they were never really all that happy. Plus, it wasn't like Todd could say it was an accident or blame the murder on somebody else. The forensic pathologist testified that Amy was impaled at least twice, but possibly 3 times. She also suffered injuries to her face and hands as if she had been trying to fend somebody off. and seeing as it was just Farmer Todd and his wife that day, it couldn't possibly have been anyone else. 7. Killer Tobacco Farmer. Christmas of 1929 was not a joyous occasion in North Carolina. A tobacco farmer on this day in history murdered his wife and all 6 of their children, including their tiny infant daughter. On Christmas Day, Marie Lawson woke up early to blend butter and sugar in preparation for her signature holiday dessert. While her cake was cooling, her dad was behind the tobacco barn slaughtering 2 of her sisters. She had no idea. Marie kept herself busy in the kitchen as if nothing terrible was about to happen. Charles Davis Lawson, her own father, then snuck up behind Marie and killed her too. Nobody ever did get to eat her signature holiday dessert. This case has boggled historians for nearly a century. Nobody knows why a seemingly ordinary tobacco farmer broke down and murdered his entire family. In 1927, 2 years before, Charlie had finally accumulated enough money to buy a piece of land, move into the farmhouse there, and grow tobacco. Everything was looking up. But during renovations on the new property, Charlie apparently hit himself in the head with an axe. Ever since then, his temper started growing out of control, and he began acting erratic. Within just a few months of hitting himself in the face by accident, he went so completely insane that he bludgeoned, shot, and tore apart his whole family. Even the youngest member, Mary Lou, who was only 4 months old, was violently beaten to a bloody pulp. Why do you think Charlie Davis Lawson went completely insane and murdered his family? Do you really think a bump on the head can turn you from being a normal person into a crazy maniac? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. The Canadian Pig Farmer. Robert Pickton is one of the worst serial killers in history, but you've probably never even heard of him. Maybe it's because he hails from Canada, where people don't typically think serial killers exist. Or maybe it's because he's just not as flamboyant and exciting as people like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. But he's actually worse than both of them put together, and he's still alive right now. Robert was only born in 1949. He's currently 72 years old and living in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. He dropped out of school to work at his family pig farm. Then, in the 1980s, after he inherited the farm and there was nobody left to see what was going on, he set off on a quest to kill 50 women. And he got very, very close. He was arrested in 2002 and convicted of killing 6 women. But it came out that he had actually killed 49. The pig farmer traveled from his rural property into the city of Vancouver, where he picked up prostitutes and paid them to go back to his farm. But when they got back to his farm, they never left. He would stab them repeatedly, torture them in some pretty sick ways, and then feed their corpses to his pigs. 5. A fatal abduction. Molly Tibbetts was 20 years old when she was found dead in an Iowa cornfield. Molly was a student of psychology at the University of Iowa. She was hoping to get her doctorate degree and go on to write books, but those dreams came to a harsh and violent end. Molly vanished after going for a run near Yarrabee Farms, a dairy farm where Christian Bahina Rivera had been working for about 4 years. He was an undocumented immigrant who had been living in the USA and working on the farm illegally. In an interview with police in August of 2018, he admitted that he saw Molly Tibbetts while she was out for her evening run. He also admitted that when he saw her, she was so young and beautiful that he got extremely angry and blacked out. This is what he said in his defense, that he blacked out and didn't remember anything that happened. When he finally woke up from his fugue, he claimed Molly was in the trunk of his car and bleeding to death, so he buried her in a remote cornfield. Well, the jury wasn't buying any of it. The illegal farmer was found guilty of first-degree murder and will likely spend the remainder of his life locked up in prison. 4. The farmer's wife. A farmer's wife has been found guilty of murdering her husband. This time it wasn't actually the farmer who did the killing, but his very own bride. His wife and her new lover had been plotting the twisted torture and murder of William Taylor for months before they finally went through with it. Angela Taylor, the wife, and her boyfriend Paul Cannon reportedly shared a deep hatred for the farmer. Angela, over 20 years younger than William, desperately wanted a divorce, but William wasn't having it. He had just turned 70 and had already been married to this woman for 2 decades. He wasn't interested in a divorce. Several months later, his skeleton was found in a swamp of mud by a passing fisherman near his farm. The corpse was so decomposed that forensics experts told the St. Albans Crown Court there was no way to determine the cause of death. But that didn't stop the murderers from being convicted. The police were able to go through text messages that showed how the couple had conspired to brutally kill the farmer. Some of these messages included discussions of bizarre fantasies, like showering together in his blood as they cut his fingers off one by one. 3. Too much gossip. A farmer in Nigeria has been sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison for killing his cousin. The murderer is Michael Oweje, a farmer his entire life. He went into hiding after he got in a fight in July of 2021 with his cousin Emmanuel. Michael hit him so hard that his head snapped around and he died. After Michael was apprehended by the police, he admitted what he did and even said he was terribly sorry. It was just one of those things that happened in the heat of the moment. He had grown up together with Emmanuel, the cousin he beat to death. And everything was great until a few months ago when his cousin started spreading rumors. He said that Michael wasn't being a very good farmer. The rumors became such a big problem that Michael's clients didn't trust him anymore. His contractors were insisting that he finish all the work before he could even think about getting paid. And it was all because of the nasty rumors. In the world of farming, this kind of thing can ruin a person's life. But then again, so can beating your cousin to death. When Michael confronted his cousin and demanded he stop spreading rumors, his cousin refused. So Michael hit him until he stopped breathing. 2. The first mass murderer. Farmer Andrew Kehoe was the very first mass murderer in American history. The horror began on a quiet day in Michigan, May of 1927. Her niece Sterling, the local first-grade teacher, asked Andrew if the students can have a picnic on his farm to celebrate the last day of school. Andrew agreed but insisted that the children go immediately to his farm for the picnic so that they could enjoy the beautiful sunny day. But let's back it up a bit before the big finale. Andrew, at this point, had a pretty miserable life. He was missing mortgage payments. His sick wife's hospital bills were piling up. He had recently suffered a pair of indignities after losing local elections, and he was served a foreclosure notice for his property. For all his misery, he blamed the town of Bath, where he lived. He also blamed the superintendent of the school, Emery Huick, who had become his mortal enemy. Before Bernice even asked Andrew to host the picnic for the children at the school, he had already been planning revenge against the town that he believed wronged him. He had accumulated hundreds of pounds of dynamite and gasoline, since there was lots of it left behind from World War I. He then used his status as the handyman of the local school to creep around at night. He wrapped thousands of pounds of bombs inside the school, hiding the explosives in wire mesh and plaster. The day of the picnic, Andrew killed his sick wife by bludgeoning her in the head. He then allowed the children to have an awesome day of picnicking on his property before they went back to school, and he hit the switch and blew it up. The explosion killed 38 students and 6 adults. He then went back to his own house, which he had also rigged with dynamite, and blew it to pieces. It was the biggest murder of children on a U.S. campus in history, even to this day. 1. Truffle thief. In France, a farmer has been sent to jail for killing a suspected truffle thief. His name is Laurent Rambaud, and he has received 8 years in jail for shooting a man who he thought was stealing his precious truffles. The shooting came after Laurent had grown increasingly irritated with a string of thefts from his farm. Then on the night of December 20th, he went out into his farm fields in the dark with a shotgun. That was when he found Ernest Pardo, a well-known truffle hunter, out walking with his dog. Laurent immediately assumed Ernest was hunting for his truffles, so he fired 2 shots. The man dropped dead from a great big hole in his chest. If you're not sure what a truffle is, let me explain. Truffles are fungi found on the roots of trees, kind of like mushrooms. They are a delicacy in France and are used as ingredients in all kinds of fancy foods. It's about $1,000 or more for 2 pounds of truffles. And now you can see why the French farmer shot the suspected thief. Laurent thought he was roaming across his property, stealing money right out of the ground. 10. Pulling a gun. A Karen who pulled a gun on a mother and daughter outside of a Chipotle in summer of 2020 was charged with felony assault, along with her husband. Her name is Jillian Westenberg, and she went full Karen at about 6 o'clock in the evening one Wednesday in Oakland, California. She and her husband were leaving the Chipotle restaurant, and as they were walking out the door, Julian bumped into a woman who was walking in. For the sake of clarity, it's important to know that Jillian is a middle-aged white woman, like most Karens out there, and the woman she bumped into was black. What should have just been a simple encounter, maybe followed by an apology, turned into a shouting match. Jillian and her victim were screaming at each other. Somebody called Jillian a racist, and that was when her husband, Eric Westenberg, joined in with the shouting. Things got so out of hand that Jillian pulled a handgun out of her purse and pointed it at the woman. Her husband, Eric, pulled out his gun as well. The victim was helpless as she tried to protect her 3 daughters from being shot by 2 clearly mentally unstable people. Thankfully, nobody was shot, and the Westenbergs fled in their minivan. But the clip of what happened went viral, and the next day, both of them were arrested. Jillian and Eric were both charged with 1 count of felonious assault, which could land them up to 4 years in prison. 9. Delta Karen. By far one of the most notorious Karens of 2021 was the woman who assaulted an elderly man on a Delta flight. It happened on December 23rd, with the Delta Airlines flight going from Tampa to Atlanta. According to the Atlanta Police Department, it was Patricia Cornwall who caused a major disturbance in the middle of the flight, beating up an old man because of a dispute over masks. Her outburst led to the injury of other passengers and employees for Delta, and luckily for all of us at home, the whole thing was caught on video. It started when Patricia told an elderly man sitting in his seat to put his mask on. He told her to mind her own business and that he was eating. For anyone who took a plane during the pandemic, you'll know the only time you were allowed to have your mask off was when you were eating or drinking, which is totally understandable. But rather than leave things as they were, Patricia stood up and started screaming at him. But what makes the whole thing so truly ridiculous is that Patricia didn't even have her mask on throughout the exchange. She wanted him to put his mask on, but she couldn't be bothered to put on her own. As she screamed, she inadvertently spat on everybody in the general vicinity. Eventually, Patricia slapped the old man in the face. A flight attendant grabbed her arm, Patricia pushed her away, and then she spat in the man's face and hit him with a closed fist in the cheek. It took 3 flight attendants to finally get control of Patricia, and by that time the elderly man was bleeding. She had to be restrained until the flight finally landed in Atlanta, at which point she was arrested. 8. Coughing on the sick. At a Pier 1 store in Jacksonville, Florida, a woman was caught on camera spitting and coughing on a brain tumor patient. It doesn't get much more Karen than this. On June 25, 2020, Deborah Hunter's life changed forever when she was ousted to the entire country as a piece of human garbage. The victim, Heather Sprague, managed to catch every last second of the bizarre outburst on her phone. Heather began recording when Deborah got into an argument with one of the employees at the store over an item return. When Deborah saw that she was being filmed, she walked up and coughed in Heather's face, blowing spit all over her skin. What she didn't realize was that the woman she had just coughed on was being treated for a brain tumor in the middle of a pandemic. If she had given Heather COVID deliberately, it could have caused major complications with her recovery process. Thankfully, everything was caught on video and Deborah was given a fitting sentence. She was ordered to pay a fine of $500, serve 6 months on probation, and attend a mental health evaluation and anger management. 7. The mother and son duo. In early December of 2021, a Karen from Tennessee and her son were caught on camera calling the police and assaulting a black man who was working in the garage of an apartment complex. The victim's name is Johnny Martinez. He was doing his job in the parking garage of the Nashville complex, which included checking vehicle permits. As he was in the middle of simply doing what he was supposed to, the mother and son approached him and demanded he tell them his business. He had no need to tell them what he was doing. It was absolutely none of their business, yet they took it to a whole new level of ridiculousness. Bitsy Brennan and her son, Edward, demanded to see this man's identification. They kept claiming he didn't live in the building. Then Edward tried to slap Johnny's cell phone out of his hand. It was all quite violent and provocative, and totally unnecessary. The mother and son Karens got a hold of the police, but they were gone by the time the cops arrived. They clearly knew they had done something wrong because Johnny stuck around to deal with the cops while they fled. But don't worry, they got what was coming to them soon enough. Bitsy lost her job following the incident. She had been an investment broker, but now that's all gone. Her company confirmed that she was no longer working for their firm about 5 days after the attack, and she had been working for the company for over a decade. All that hard work washed down the drain because a man with dark skin was doing his own job and minding his own business in her apartment complex, and she didn't like it. 6. The SOHO Karen. The SOHO Karen is about as notorious as Karens get. She first came on the scene in December of 2020 when she dragged a 14-year-old to the lobby floor of the Arlo Hotel in New York City. Why? She claimed he stole her phone. Footage of Maya Poinsetta tackling the teenager, who just so happened to be black, was captured by the teen's father and shared with everyone on the internet. She accused Keon Harold Jr. of stealing her cell phone, which was not true at all. Minutes after the incident took place, after the 22-year-old woman had basically assaulted a child, an Uber driver turned up with her phone. It looked like she had forgotten it in his vehicle. Maya basically ruined her life with this whole fiasco. She had been a cheerleader and aspiring actress, but quickly turned into one of the most hated people in New York City. As of right now, she's facing jail time and charges of committing a hate crime. But here's the icing on the cake. She was already a mess. She had gotten into trouble months before the SOHO incident when Maya and her mom caused a disturbance at a California hotel. Staff at the hotel asked them to leave, but Maya and her mother refused. Somebody called the Beverly Hills police, and when the cops came, they found Maya and her mother drunk in public. Maya's mother attacked the cops with some punches and kicks, and Maya was charged with public intoxication. She was also caught just the day before for driving drunk and was given a 3-year probation. 5. The Mega Karen. April 7, 2021, a Mega Karen was arrested by a pair of officers at a Nordstrom rack in Texas. The woman refused to wear her mask when she entered the store, then got physical with the employees inside. Her name is Cara Bell, and she told the employees she had a medical exemption and didn't need to wear a mask. When they said it didn't matter and she needed to leave, she started pushing the workers and getting very agitated. Then the cops showed up as she was standing outside ranting like an absolute crazy person. Cara Bell refused to identify herself. She was screaming about being a child of God and basically said she was allowed to do whatever she wanted. She also claimed that she was the one who was insulted by the employees and that she had been discriminated against for being white. In the end, this Karen didn't get into much trouble. She didn't do anything except refuse to wear a mask and act irrational and crazy. She was detained by the police and revealed to her community as an unstable person. Considering she was a local school board candidate at the time, this probably ruined her immediate plans. 4. Meltdown at the bagel shop. A woman in Florida had a meltdown at a bagel shop in January of 2021. At the time, she was a candidate for mayor in Boynton Beach, South Florida. Cindy Falco DiCorrada didn't act like much of a mayor, though, when she walked into the fast food restaurant without wearing a mask and then caused a scene. Immediately, workers at the Einstein Brothers bagel shop asked her to put a mask on her or leave. She responded by screaming like a banshee, crying that her rights were being violated, and complaining the masks were unconstitutional. She refused to leave, which may have actually saved her career. Instead, she was filmed having one of the biggest meltdowns probably of her adult life. Then, when the police came, things got even more heated. An officer moved in to arrest her, and she continued screaming. She told the officer to get their hands off of her. She said she had the right to protect herself. And then, as she was being carried away in handcuffs, she screamed that the officer was kidnapping her. She ended up being found guilty of trespassing and resisting an officer, with each offense punishable by up to 1 year in jail. Instead of running for mayor, Cindy might be sitting in a jail cell. 3. Hurling a whopper. Judith Ann Black is a retiree in her 70s who grew up in Texas and is living in Florida. In early 2021, Judith was caught on video throwing a Whopper at an employee at Burger King and dishing out some pretty harsh insults. She called the worker, who happened to be a black woman, something that I absolutely cannot repeat, but that you can probably guess. Why did the racially charged burst of anger start? According to the police report, Judith was upset that the tomato on her burger was too thick. When the employee asked if she would please calm down, Judith went on a racist rant and threw the burger in her face. Judith knew she had done something wrong. She got out of there as quickly as possible, but not before another employee got her license plate and phoned the police. The cops tracked Judith down to a retirement home, and she was promptly arrested and charged with battery. 2. The manager of the airport. On May 27, 2021, the airport Karen struck. Her name is Ter Ann Blues, and she was arrested on camera demanding to see the manager of the airport. She was an advanced form of Karen, evolving from screaming for managers at shopping centers to the mythical manager of the entire Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Why was she so angry? Ter had been denied access to her flight. It had nothing to do with masks, but was because she was wasted and acting crazy. According to American Airlines, she was screaming at the counter. Then, when she was told to sit down and be patient, she ran to the bridge door in an attempt to push her way onto the plane. The police had to come and escort her out of the building. When they arrived on scene, the woman was sweating. She was breathing heavily, and her eyes were totally red and bloodshot. She was arrested for public intoxication and, when searched, was found to have containers of random pills and a small black pouch with a glass pipe. This Karen apparently had a bit of a pill problem. 1. Slurs in the park. A woman from Long Beach was caught in a viral video back in October of 2019 committing a racist attack. This one was bizarre because the woman, identified as Lena Hernandez, went out of her way to attack Asian Americans in a public park. This was in Torrance at Charles Wilson Park. Lena first assaulted a custodian at the mall, then attacked a Filipino-American woman, and was just being generally terrible to all the Asian people in the area. But it was her attack on the Filipino woman that earned her a cozy 45 days in jail. She shoved Kesa Lynn Saminow to the ground, pulled her hair, and punched her in the head multiple times. This was after 2 different incidents in June when Lena had been caught ranting in the same park, going off on racial tirades aimed at Asian Americans. She just kept going back to the park and screaming about Asians, clearly mentally disturbed. Hopefully the 45 days in jail will make her think twice about going back to the park and causing problems, or indeed, causing problems in any park.
Number 8. Todd Mullis. Police in Earlville, Iowa, received an unusual call in 2018 when a farmer named Todd Mullis claimed that his wife, Amy, was unresponsive after what appeared to be a freak accident in their shed. He told the 911 operator that she had no pulse and that she looked gone. Mullis told the police that their son found Amy with a corn rake through her chest and that she must have fallen on the tool. The son removed the rake from his mother's body and they rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late to save Amy, who was pronounced dead at the hospital after losing so much blood. The emergency room doctor who tried to save her life noticed that her injuries didn't add up to Todd's story. She had 6 puncture wounds, yet the corn rake she supposedly fell on only had 4 tines. Detectives soon learned that Todd and Amy had a troubling marriage. They tied the knot in 2004 and had 3 children together, but at some point, Amy began to stray. At the time of her death, she was cheating on Todd with someone who worked on their farm. Todd initially denied knowing about the affair, but people who knew the couple told investigators that he had caught Amy with her secret lover. They stopped sharing a bed, and Amy told her friends that if anything happened to her, Todd was responsible. A search of their home computer revealed that shortly before her death, he had researched how the Aztecs punished cheating spouses. Todd was found guilty of first-degree murder and will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Number 7. Jacqueline Alexandra Rivera. When someone suspects their partner of cheating, it can cause them to act extremely irrational and do things they wouldn't normally do. One Northern California woman took things to such an extreme that she ended up with a criminal record. Back in 2012, 18-year-old Jacqueline Alexandra Rivera began to suspect that her boyfriend at the time was cheating on her. She went to the 21-year-old's home in San Mateo to discuss his concerns, but he refused to talk about it, and the relationship ended. Rivera returned to the man's house around 3 o'clock in the morning, snuck into his bedroom, and lit his bed on fire. She snuck away before his father heard him screaming and put the flames out with a garden hose. He suffered from burns to his arms and legs, but nobody called the police. Weeks later, Rivera's friend told the ex-boyfriend that Rivera had confessed to committing the crime. The person also called the police, and they quickly arrested her. Rivera was found mentally unfit to stand trial, but this didn't get her off the hook for her crimes. She spent the next 2 years in a psychiatric facility until her mental health was restored. The trial proceeded, and she pled no contest in exchange for a maximum 5-year prison sentence. Number 6. Tu Tia Huyn. 29-year-old Tu Tia Huyn was shocked to find her 34-year-old husband, Stephen Hafer, dead in the bedroom of their Houston, Texas home in early 2017. She called the police claiming that Stephen had killed himself, but detectives believed that the evidence told a much different story and that perhaps Gwen had a reason for wanting her husband dead. The Houston Police Department said that trajectory of the bullet was uncharacteristic of a suicide, and the shotgun that Stephen supposedly shot himself with had been wiped clean. Hyun's story repeatedly kept changing, and she eventually admitted that she had been cheating on her husband with an ex-boyfriend. Stephen's parents later told ABC 13 that they had noticed some tension between the couple during their last holiday visit, and that the two were having money problems. Shortly before his death, their son said that he was planning to leave Hyun and move out of state with their 2-year-old daughter. Police charged Hyun with killing Stephen, but she maintained her innocence throughout the entire case. A medical examiner ultimately determined that Stephen's death was, in fact, a suicide after all, and Hyun was cleared of all charges. She accused the authorities of attacking her right from the beginning, causing her to lose her job as a nurse and robbing her of the ability to properly mourn her husband. It's probably fair to say that her affair and the couple's other problems are what made her such a strong suspect, but just because someone cheats on their partner, it doesn't make them a killer. Number 5. A burned bride-to-be. Find out you're being cheated on is one of the worst feelings a person can go through. But it's even worse when the cheater is having an affair with someone you know and trust. One bride-to-be wanted to make sure that she got the last laugh after finding out that her fiancé was cheating on her with her best friend. She ordered a custom necklace from New York-based jewelry designer Liv Portillo and had it engraved with the words, "Have my leftovers." The woman planned to give the jewelry to her friend for her birthday as a way of letting her backstabbing buddy know that she had found out about the affair. She planned to do it in front of other people, and she paid for the necklace with her fiancé's credit card. Portillo, who owns the jewelry company DBL Jewelry, posted the story on TikTok. Many users commented that it was a shame that such a beautiful necklace had such a sad backstory to it. Others wrote that they wish they knew what happened when the customer gave the gift to what, I'm guessing, is now her former best friend. What would you do if you found out your fiancé was cheating on you with your best friend? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 4. TAVNER Smith. 41-year-old TAVNER Smith is well known as the pastor of Venue Church, a megachurch in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that made news headlines in the past for allegedly being a brainwashing cult that's getting rich off people's donations. Smith started the church in 2012 and spent copious amounts of time recruiting members. His efforts paid off. In just a few years, Venue Church became one of the fastest-growing churches in the U.S. The ambitious pastor strongly urged worshipers to donate, claiming that it would bless their personal finances. Naturally, many people saw this as a classically cultish strategy for brainwashing followers and taking their money. The church, nevertheless, continued to grow, and by the end of last year, it had a presence in 2 states, with as many as 2,000 people attending each service. But its glory days become numbered when people began to suspect that Smith was cheating on his wife. In December, some volunteers paid the married father of 3 a surprise visit at his home. Smith was in his boxers and had a female church employee over. She was wrapped in a towel. He claimed that he had spilled chili on their clothes and had to wash them, but the visitors didn't buy the story. They had noticed long before then that Smith and the woman, who was also married, seemed to be joined at the hip. The pair spent a lot of time alone in his office and exchanged comments on social media that seemed overly friendly. Rumors began to fly about them having an affair, and a video of the couple kissing in a restaurant began circulating online. Smith never publicly admitted to the affair. He announced last year that he and his wife were divorcing and took a short break from preaching to get his life in order. People began to leave the church and stop donating as the preacher's personal life unraveled. Meanwhile, former members and employees took to social media with stories about how the church had allegedly abused them and taken advantage of their pocketbooks for years. It wasn't long before Smith returned to preaching. His sermons became increasingly pushy and aggressive as he criticized members for not donating enough and told them not to associate with those who had left. The future of Venue Church remains uncertain, but it seems as though Smith's infidelity and shady fundraising techniques may have caught up to him for good. Number 3. Teen Tragedy. A new year is supposed to make new beginnings, but this sadly wasn't the case for 15-year-old Diamond Alvarez, who was recently found fighting for her life on a sidewalk outside her Houston, Texas home. Someone had fired 22 bullets into her from behind and left her for dead. It was too late to save the teen. Diamond had left to walk the family dog and never came home. When the dog returned alone, her family knew that something was wrong and went out to look for her. She died in her mother's arms. Investigators soon learned that Diamond had met up with a young man she had recently broken up with after finding out that he was cheating on her. The pair had dated for 6 months when she discovered his double life. Before Diamond met up with him, on the day of her death, he sent her a text message telling her to keep their relationship a secret. When police went to arrest 17-year-old Frank DeLeon Jr. at his home, they found a suitcase on his bed filled with clothing and toiletries. Based on the amount of items, prosecutors said that it was not simply an overnight bag, implying that DeLeon had plans to flee town and live on the run. They told the judge that they were concerned about him showing up for court, and the high school senior's bond was set at $250,000. He managed to come up with enough money and was released on house arrest. Diamond's mother told local station KHOU that she's devastated about DeLeon's release and that his bond was so low. She also said that she's scared because he lives near her and the family had already received threats from people. The community is demanding justice for Diamond, whose life was senselessly cut short when it was just starting. Number 2. Reality star rendezvous. The reality show 90 Day Fiancé is known for its controversial couples. During Season 7, viewers met Michael Jessen, a 40-something wine entrepreneur from Connecticut who brought his 23-year-old bride-to-be to the U.S. on a fiancé visa. Many people accused the young Brazilian model, named Juliana Custodio, of using her wealthy older husband for money and a green card. But initially skeptical fans began to change their minds about Juliana as they saw her interacting with Michael's kids and getting along with his ex-wife, Sarah. Juliana's willingness to act in the children's best interests and her respect for the mother seemed genuine and mature. Around the time the COVID-19 pandemic began, Sarah was diagnosed with cancer. She and her husband, Sean, fell on hard times, and Michael and Juliana welcomed the couple into their home. For a while, the household seemed like a modern-day Brady Bunch. They put on their best faces for social media, leaving fans both shocked and impressed. After all, it's one thing to get along with your partner's ex, but it's another to let them move in and live as one big happy family. But things weren't as picture perfect as they seemed. Several months ago, Michael and Juliana announced that they were splitting. Juliana accused Michael's family of treating her like a maid and living off her money. She abruptly relocated to Germany and revealed right after the move that she's pregnant by her new boyfriend, Ben. Michael was reportedly devastated by the news, which came with rumors that Sarah's husband might be the baby's father. An anonymous tipster told the media that they saw Juliana and Sean making out at the family's home a few months ago, and that Sarah suspected an affair and questioned the baby's paternity. Juliana denied the rumors and insisted that Ben is the baby's dad, but not everyone is convinced. The drama is still unfolding, but many people have already made up their minds and are harassing Juliana on social media. It doesn't help that shortly before the split became public, Juliana made a cryptic post telling her followers that soon everyone was going to hate her. And number 1, sickle-wielding scorned husband. It doesn't take much for an argument about an affair to get out of hand. This recently happened in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, where a 31-year-old man lost his temper and hacked his wife to death with a sickle. Identified by police as K. Kumar, the accused murderer had confronted his 25-year-old spouse about her ongoing romance with another man. She often visited her lover, and they kept in touch over the phone. Kumar apparently got sick of it, and a fight broke out in the early hours of the morning. He flew into a fit of uncontrolled rage and attacked her with a weapon. She died immediately from her injuries, according to the police. Sadly, cases like this are not uncommon in India, where violence against women is high. In June of last year, a 55-year-old man stabbed his wife to death in the streets of Gujarat because he thought she was cheating on him. A few months before that, a 40-year-old Delhi resident killed his wife in public. She had refused to quit her job and become a homemaker, leading him to think that she was having an affair with a coworker. The woman left her controlling husband and moved in with her parents, but he tracked her down and stabbed her. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn about more instances of cheating gone wrong, let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe. See you next time.